I
The
have
early morning
50. Do I
sun
hear
cast long
55?
shadows across the concrete
55.
lot as
Going
Emma Reynolds
once,
shifted her weight
going
from one swollen
twice,
ankle to the other.
sold.
Her hand instinctively moved to the small of her back, trying to relieve the persistent ache that had become her constant companion these past 7 months. Around her, about 24 people gathered, most of them regulars with clipboards and keen eyes that could spot value beneath dust and neglect. "You sure you want to be out here, honey?" A gray-haired woman with weathered skin glanced at Emma's prominent belly. "These vultures don't play nice." Emma forced a smile. "I need this," she whispered, more to herself than the woman. 3 months ago, she'd been sitting in her supervisor's office at the accounting firm, a position she'd held for 5 years, listening to empty phrases like company restructuring and last in, first out. The severance package lasted 6 weeks. Then came the certified letter from her landlord, the collection calls about medical bills, and finally Jason's text message, "I'm not ready for this. I'm sorry." All she had was 212.75, a nearly maxed out credit card, and the classified ads she'd spotted last night. Storage unit auction, no minimum bid. The image of her apartment doorway flashed in her mind, that yellow eviction notice with its cold, impersonal typeface giving her 30 days to vacate. The same door she'd returned to after her last doctor's appointment, where Dr. Anderson's concerned face had told her everything before he even spoke about potential complications and additional monitoring that her insurance would no longer cover. "Next up, Unit 219, bellowed the auctioneer, a barrel-chested man with a voice that carried without effort. The metal door rattled upward, revealing a jumble of forgotten possessions catching dust in the sunlight. An old wooden rocking chair, boxes stacked haphazardly, a lamp with a crooked shade, some furniture draped with sheets like ghosts of a former life. From the back of the crowd, a tall man in an expensive suit stepped forward. His silver hair and confident stance immediately commanded attention. Several of the regulars nodded respectfully, a few even stepping aside. "Victor Blackwell," the gray-haired woman whispered to Emma, "owns half the storage facilities in the county. Don't often see him at these small auctions." The serious buyers shifted, taking quick inventory with practiced eyes. One by one, they shook their heads and stepped back. "Worthless. Nothing but junk. Waste of time. Do I have $100?" The auctioneer called out. Silence fell over the crowd. "All right, do I have $50? More silence. "Folks, do I have 20? The auctioneer's voice betrayed a hint of desperation. Victor Blackwell laughed, the sound echoing against the metal units. "Michael, you won't get 20 cents for this garbage." His eyes swept the crowd, landing on Emma's protruding belly. "Though I suppose there's always someone desperate enough to throw good money after bad." Something pulled at Emma, perhaps desperation, perhaps instinct. Her paddle rose before she could reconsider. "20 to the young lady," Michael announced. "Do I have $30? Silence fell. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. "Going once, going twice." Michael paused, scanning for any last-minute bidders. "Sold Unit 219 to Paddle 42. Emma's heart sank as the reality of her impulsive decision settled in. What had she done? $20 she couldn't spare on what everyone else recognized as garbage. Victor Blackwell approached her, towering over her 5'4" frame. First time, his smile never reached his eyes. "Word of advice, sweetheart. Leave the treasure hunting to professionals, especially in your condition." His gaze flicked to her belly. Michael approached, his expression softening as he handed her a key attached to a plastic tag. "First timer?" he asked, not unkindly. Emma nodded, her throat suddenly tight. "You've got 3 days to clear it out completely," he explained. "Whatever you don't take goes to the dump, and they'll charge you for the privilege." "Thank you," she managed. "Good luck, sweetheart." He hesitated. "Sometimes these old units surprise you. My cousin once found a box of silver dollars under a stack of National Geographics. You never know." As the crowd moved to the next unit, Emma stood alone before her purchase. The baby shifted inside her, a flutter of movement that felt like question marks. What now? How would she transport these items? Where would she store them? How could she possibly sort through everything before her due date? She stepped closer to the unit, the musty smell of forgotten things washing over her. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, streaming through the open door. Her $20 now bought her a mountain of decisions, heavy lifting she wasn't supposed to do, and the slim chance of finding anything of value. Her hands trembled as she snapped a picture of the unit with her phone. She would need to rent a truck, find help to move the heavier items. The calculator in her mind ran frightening numbers. This gamble might end up costing her more than just the bid price. But as Emma slipped the key into her pocket, something besides fear stirred within her. For months, her life had spiraled beyond her control. The job loss, the pregnancy complications, Jason's abandonment. This jumble of forgotten things was now hers to find value in what others had discarded. "We'll make this work," she whispered to her unborn child, one box at a time. The rental truck rumbled to a stop in front of Unit 219. Emma had splurged on the smallest one available, a decision her bank account protested, but her body thanked her for. Her elderly neighbor, who'd offered to help her load the heavier items, checked his watch. "I've got about 2 hours before my doctor's appointment," Mr. Garcia said, pulling on work gloves. His 70 years hadn't diminished the strength in his hands earned through decades of carpentry. "Let's make it count." Emma unlocked the padlock, the metal warm from the midday sun. As the door rolled upward again, the full reality of her purchase confronted her. The unit was deeper than it had appeared during the auction, with narrow pathways winding between stacks of boxes and furniture. "Good Lord," Mr. Garcia whispered. "This is quite a collection." Emma fought rising panic. "We need a system," she said, more to calm herself than inform her neighbor. "Furniture first, then boxes. I'll sort into 3 piles. Sell, donate, trash." They started with items nearest the door. A water-damaged bookshelf went immediately into the trash category. A small end table with a wobbly leg might be salvageable. Then, partially hidden beneath a dusty sheet, Emma discovered the rocking chair she glimpsed during the auction. "This looks promising," Mr. Garcia said, wiping away decades of dust with his handkerchief. The wood beneath gleamed with a rich patina. "Solid oak, hand-carved. Doesn't look factory-made." Emma ran her fingers along the smooth armrest, feeling the gentle curves and careful craftsmanship. "Is it valuable?" "I'm no expert, but my daughter paid $300 for one not half as nice as this at an antique store." He tested the runners. "Still solid, no wobble." $300. Emma's heart quickened. That would cover next week's rent with enough left for groceries. As they worked, a picture of the previous owner began to emerge. The furniture pieces spanned several decades but shared a certain quality, solidly built, well-maintained, despite their current dusty abandonment. The boxes contained primarily women's possessions, clothing from the 1980s, housewares, books with feminine handwriting in the margins. "Looks like a nurse's things," Mr. Garcia observed, holding up a faded uniform with an embroidered name tag. "Rebecca Coleman." The name meant nothing to Emma, but she nodded and continued sorting. After an hour, they had filled half the truck with items worth keeping or selling. Her spirits lifted at the growing pile of potentially valuable furniture and vintage items. "Coleman." Mr. Garcia paused, his brow furrowed in concentration. "That name sounds familiar. There was some kind of medical scandal years ago, back in the 90s, I think. Something about a research project at Springfield Memorial. The name Coleman was definitely involved." Emma's interest peaked, but the pressing need to clear the unit took precedence over historical curiosities. They worked steadily, the afternoon heat intensifying in the concrete corridor of storage units. By the time Mr. Garcia needed to leave for his appointment, they had loaded most of the furniture and several boxes of the more promising items. "I can come back tomorrow to help with the rest," he offered, wiping sweat from his brow. "You've done more than enough," Emma insisted. "I'll just grab a few more boxes today and come back tomorrow for another load." After Mr. Garcia left, Emma continued sorting through the remaining items alone. The back of the unit contained more personal effects, photo albums, file boxes labeled by year, and a large wooden trunk with tarnished brass fittings. She attempted to lift it only to discover it was far too heavy. She'd need to open it here to assess its contents. The clasp was stiff with age, resisting her initial attempts before finally giving way with a metallic groan. Inside were neatly folded quilts and linens yellowed with age but still in good condition. As Emma lifted them out, her fingers detected something solid beneath the fabric, a false bottom or hidden compartment. Her heart rate quickened as she carefully removed the remaining linens. The bottom of the trunk didn't match the sides, it was newer, less weathered. She ran her fingers along the edges and found a small indentation. When she pressed it, a soft click rewarded her persistence. The false panel lifted to reveal a small wooden box about the size of a thick novel nestled in the hidden compartment. Unlike the trunk, this box was intricately carved with flowers and vines, its surface polished to a soft glow. A tiny brass lock secured its contents. Emma hesitated, questioning whether she had the right to open something so deliberately hidden. But curiosity overcame her reservations. The lock was merely ornamental, giving way with minimal pressure. Inside lay a collection of letters bound with faded blue ribbon, a handful of photographs, and what appeared to be official documents. The top photograph showed a young woman in her early 20s, her nurse's cap perched atop dark curls, smiling proudly in front of Springfield Memorial Hospital. Emma turned it over. Rebecca Coleman, graduation day 1980, was written in careful script. The next photo showed the same woman with a distinguished-looking man, both in lab coats, examining something on a clipboard. His arm was around her shoulders in a gesture that seemed more intimate than professional. Dr. Thomas Coleman and Rebecca Research Lab, 1989, was written on the back. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she untied the ribbon holding the letters together. The paper had yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. The first was dated January 12th, none. My dearest daughter, you don't know me yet, and perhaps you never will. As I write this, you are growing inside me, a secret I've been forced to keep from everyone, even your father. I don't know if I'll be permitted to hold you or if they'll take you away immediately. What I do know is that I already love you more than I thought possible. Emma's throat tightened. She flipped through the other letters, all addressed to an unnamed daughter, all written by Rebecca Coleman during her pregnancy. The final letter was dated September 30th, 1990, written in a shaky hand. My precious girl, they took you away today. I wasn't even allowed to see your face. Your grandmother insists this is for the best, that a single mother with a ruined reputation cannot provide the life you deserve. Perhaps she's right. All I know is that half my heart left with you. I've arranged for these letters to be kept safe. Someday, if you ever wonder about me, if you ever search, they will be waiting. Know that I didn't abandon you willingly. All my love, your mother, Rebecca. Emma's hand shook as she set the letter down. Beneath the letters lay a birth certificate with the infant's name redacted. But the date leaped out at her, September 30th, 1990. Her birthday. The hospital Springfield Memorial. The mother's name, Rebecca Coleman. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Emma steadied herself against the trunk, her mind racing. Could it be mere coincidence? She had always known she was adopted. Her parents had never hidden that fact. But they had told her the adoption was closed, that her birth mother had wanted no contact. The baby kicked vigorously inside her, as if responding to her agitation. Emma placed a protective hand over her belly, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She needed to think logically. Springfield was her birthplace according to her adoption papers. The date matched. But how many babies were born at Springfield Memorial that day? It could still be coincidence. Yet something deep within her resonated with these discoveries. The trunk so carefully preserved, the hidden box with its precious contents, the letters written with such longing. Emma felt a connection to this Rebecca Coleman that transcended rational explanation. A shadow fell across the storage unit door, startling Emma from her reverie. A man in a crisp suit stood silhouetted against the afternoon sun. Finding anything interesting? The voice was smooth, professional, with an undercurrent of authority. Emma hastily tucked the letters back into the box. Just sorting through things. The man stepped inside, his polished shoes incongruous against the dusty concrete. Leo Maxwell, he introduced himself, extending a business card. Blackwell Storage Properties. Emma accepted the card reluctantly. Is there a problem? Potentially. Leo's smile didn't reach his eyes. There appears to have been a procedural error with today's auction. Blackwell has asked me to inform all buyers that we may need to invalidate some of the sales. Emma's spine stiffened. I have a receipt. The auctioneer said the sale was final. Normally, yes. Leo glanced around the unit, his gaze lingering on the wooden box beside Emma. However, when company policies aren't properly followed, exceptions must be made. We believe some personal documents may have been included that should have been returned to their owners or next of kin. The wooden box suddenly felt heavy with significance. Emma resisted the urge to cover it with her body. I've already paid and started moving things. You can't just change the rules. I understand your frustrations. Reynolds, Emma Reynolds. Leo made a note in his phone. Miss Reynolds, if you found any personal documents, letters, photographs, legal papers, we would be particularly interested in reclaiming those. Mr. Blackwell would be willing to compensate you, of course. A chill ran down Emma's spine that had nothing to do with the late afternoon shadows lengthening across the concrete floor. I haven't gone through everything yet. If I find anything like that, I'll let you know. Leo handed her another card. Please do. Directly to me, not the main office. His eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Blackwell is very interested in resolving this matter quickly and discreetly. After Leo left, Emma sat beside the trunk, heart pounding. The coincidence seemed too great. Victor Blackwell, at a small auction he normally wouldn't attend, and now his representative specifically asking about personal documents hours after she'd discovered them. Someone knew what was in this storage unit, and they wanted it badly enough to invent procedural errors. Emma carefully repacked the wooden box, tucking it securely in her purse, rather than loading it into the truck with the other items. Whatever connection these documents had to her past, she wasn't relinquishing them until she understood their significance. That evening, Emma spread the contents of the wooden box across her small kitchen table. Besides the letters and photos she'd already examined, she found several newspaper clippings about a promising medical research project at Springfield Memorial Hospital in 1989. Thomas Coleman, MD, was quoted extensively about a new treatment protocol his team was developing. Rebecca's name appeared in the list of research assistants. Another clipping dated 6 months later reported the abrupt termination of the research project amid allegations of ethical violations. No specifics were given, but Thomas Coleman was quoted defending the project's integrity against baseless accusations from competitors. Emma searched online for information about Rebecca Coleman, finding only a few professional mentions in nursing journals from the early 1990s, then nothing. Thomas Coleman, however, appeared in numerous academic publications and currently held a position as professor emeritus at Riverside University Medical Center. A small voice of caution warned Emma against jumping to conclusions. The connection to her birth date might be coincidental. The storage unit might have belonged to someone who merely collected these items. But the warning from Leo Maxwell suggested otherwise. Someone believed these documents were important enough to try to intimidate her into returning them. Emma created a throwaway email account and drafted a message to Dr. Thomas Coleman at his university address. She paused, considering her words carefully, then wrote simply, I recently acquired some items belonging to Rebecca Coleman, including correspondence regarding her child born September 30th, 1990. I believe this information may be of personal significance to me and would appreciate an opportunity to discuss it with you. She included her phone number but not her name, then hit send before she could reconsider. The following morning, Emma returned to the storage unit with Mr. Garcia. They worked efficiently, clearing out the remaining items worth saving. Emma deliberately avoided mentioning the wooden box or Leo Maxwell's visit, though guilt nagged at her for withholding information from her kind neighbor. You know, Mr. Garcia said as they loaded the last bookshelf, I remembered more about that Coleman scandal I mentioned. It wasn't just about medical research. There was something personal too, an affair between a professor and a student, I think. The kind of thing that would ruin careers back then. Emma's heart quickened. Do you remember any names? It was a long time ago. Mr. Garcia wiped his brow. But I'm pretty sure the professor's name was Coleman. Thomas Coleman, maybe? The woman was his research assistant, or nurse, something like that. Emma maintained a neutral expression, but internally pieces were falling into place. Thomas and Rebecca shared a last name in those photos. Perhaps they had been married, or related in some other way. As Emma drove the rental truck back to her apartment, her mind raced with possibilities. If Rebecca Coleman was indeed her birth mother, what did that make Thomas Coleman to her? And why was Victor Blackwell so interested in reclaiming these documents? She had just finished unloading the truck when her phone chimed with an email notification. The response was brief. I do not discuss Ms. Coleman or her personal matters with strangers. However, if you have indeed come into possession of her private correspondence, I would strongly advise returning it to the proper authorities. These matters are more complex than you realize. The email was signed simply, T. Coleman, M.D. His dismissive tone only strengthened Emma's resolve. She had the right to know about her origins, especially now that she was about to become a mother herself. Medical history alone could be crucial for her child's future. She spent the afternoon photographing everything from the wooden box, creating digital copies, before securing the originals in a fireproof lockbox she'd purchased with some of the proceeds from selling the rocking chair. Mr. Garcia had been right. A local antique dealer had paid $350 for it after only a cursory inspection. That evening, as Emma sorted through other items from the storage unit, she discovered a photo album hidden between larger books on a shelf. Unlike the formal photographs in the wooden box, these captured casual moments: Rebecca in scrubs, laughing with colleagues, a holiday party at what appeared to be a hospital, Rebecca and Thomas hiking in autumn woods, their faces flushed with exertion and happiness. The final pages contained ultrasound images. 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 32 weeks were written beneath them in Rebecca's handwriting. The last page held a pressed flower in a scrap of paper with a tiny footprint, the only record Rebecca had been allowed to keep of her child. Emma's throat tightened with emotion. She placed her hand over her own swollen belly, feeling a profound connection across time to this woman who had carried her, loved her, and lost her. The sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet moment. Emma froze, listening intently. Another crash came from her bedroom. Someone was in her apartment. Moving as quietly as her pregnant body allowed, Emma grabbed her phone and slipped into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She called 911, whispering her address and situation to the dispatcher, who promised officers were on their way. Through the bathroom door, she could hear someone rummaging through her belongings, drawers opening and closing, furniture being moved. They were searching for something, and Emma had little doubt what that something was. After what seemed like an eternity, sirens wailed in the distance. The sounds of searching abruptly ceased, followed by rapid footsteps and the slam of her apartment door. By the time police arrived, the intruder was gone. "Anything missing?" the officer asked, notebook in hand. Emma surveyed the chaos of her apartment. Her mattress had been upended, drawers emptied onto the floor, closets ransacked. But her purse was untouched on the kitchen counter, and the fireproof box remained securely hidden in the back of her pantry behind canned goods. "I don't think so," she said carefully. "It looks like they were searching for something specific." "Any ideas what that might be?" Emma hesitated, then shook her head. Without evidence connecting Leo Maxwell or Victor Blackwell to the break-in, sharing her suspicions might sound paranoid. The officer gave her a card with the case number. "We'll have a patrol car drive by regularly tonight. Call immediately if you notice anything suspicious." After the police left, Emma sat amid the disarray of her apartment, cradling her belly protectively. The intrusion had crossed a line from intimidation to outright threat. Whoever wanted those documents was willing to break the law to get them. She couldn't stay here, not tonight, possibly not ever again. The violation of her home had shattered her sense of security. With trembling hands, she packed an overnight bag and the fireproof box, then called Mr. Garcia. "Of course you can stay with us," he assured her after she explained about the break-in, carefully omitting any mention of the documents. "My wife will be delighted to fuss over you. You shouldn't be alone right now anyway, not in your condition." That night in the Garcias' spare bedroom, Emma made a decision. She would not be intimidated. Whatever secrets these documents contained, she had a right to know if they connected to her birth. Tomorrow she would dive deeper into her research about Rebecca and Thomas Coleman and about Victor Blackwell's possible connection to them. Morning brought clarity and renewed determination. After a hearty breakfast from Mrs. Garcia, who clucked maternally over Emma's delicate condition, Emma headed to the public library. Its computers offered anonymity she couldn't risk with her own devices. Her search for Rebecca Coleman yielded little beyond what she'd already found, but Thomas Coleman's name produced abundant results. His career trajectory showed a meteoric rise after 1991, when he published a groundbreaking paper on autoimmune treatments. His research had earned him prestigious awards, a named professorship, and significant patents. More interesting were the news archives mentioning Victor Blackwell. In the late 1980s, he had been a pharmaceutical executive specializing in research investments, including the very project Thomas and Rebecca had been working on before its sudden termination. After the project's collapse, Blackwell had started his own biotech company, eventually diversifying into real estate and storage facilities, among other ventures. A medical journal from 1993 contained an article co-authored by Thomas Coleman and Victor Blackwell on autoimmune treatments, notably similar to the research project that had been shut down in 1990. The connections were becoming clearer, though the full picture remained elusive. What did Rebecca's pregnancy have to do with the research project? Why was Blackwell so interested in reclaiming these documents now decades later? Emma's next search was for Rebecca Coleman in Current. The results made her blood run cold. A patient advocacy website listed Rebecca Coleman as receiving treatment for stage 4 lymphoma at Lakeside Medical Center, the same cancer center affiliated with Riverside University where Thomas Coleman still worked. Rebecca was alive but seriously ill. Emma printed the information, hands trembling slightly. After 32 years, her birth mother was within reach, though perhaps not for long. The urgency of the situation crystallized her resolve. She would not be deterred by threats or break-ins. As Emma gathered her research and prepared to leave the library, she noticed a man in a dark jacket watching her from the periodical section. When their eyes met, he quickly looked away, but the hairs on the back of Emma's neck stood up. She took a circuitous route home, constantly checking for followers before returning to the Garcia's house. That afternoon, Emma drafted a more detailed email to Thomas Coleman, this time including her full name, birth date, and a scan of her original birth certificate with her adoptive parents' names. She explained her recent discovery of the documents and her suspicion that Rebecca Coleman might be her birth mother. "I understand these matters are complex," she wrote, "but with my own child on the way, I believe I have the right to know about my medical history and origins. I've also learned that Rebecca is currently battling cancer. If she is indeed my birth mother, I would like the opportunity to meet her before it's too late." She hesitated before adding, "I should mention that Victor Blackwell has shown unusual interest in recovering these documents to the point of sending representatives to intimidate me and possibly orchestrating a break-in at my apartment. I don't understand his involvement, but I believe you might." Emma sent the email, then sat back absently, rubbing her belly as the baby shifted restlessly inside her. "We're going to figure this out," she whispered to her unborn child, "no matter what." That evening, as snow began to fall outside the Garcia's cozy home, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Miss Reynolds." The voice was deep, authoritative. "This is Thomas Coleman. I received your email. We need to talk, but not over the phone. Can you come to my office tomorrow at Riverside University Medical Center, 10 o'clock? "I'll be there," Emma replied, heart pounding. "Come alone," he added before hanging up. Emma barely slept that night, her mind racing with questions and her body uncomfortable with the growing weight of her child. By morning, several inches of snow had accumulated, unusual for November. Weather forecasts warned of a developing storm system moving in by afternoon. "You can't possibly go out in this, Mrs. Garcia protested when Emma announced her plans to visit Riverside University. "The roads are treacherous and in your condition." But Emma was resolute. "This can't wait. It's important, more important than a little snow." Mr. Garcia, seeing her determination, offered to drive her. "At least let me get you there safely. I can run errands nearby and pick you up when you're finished." Emma gratefully accepted, touched by the couple's concern. As they navigated the increasingly hazardous roads, snow continued to fall in thick, wet flakes that clung to everything they touched. The university campus, when they finally arrived, was eerily quiet. Most classes canceled due to the weather. Thomas Coleman's office was located in the medical research wing, a modern glass and steel structure that contrasted with the university's older Gothic buildings. Emma thanked Mr. Garcia, arranging to text him when she was finished, and made her way carefully across the slippery walkway to the entrance. The department secretary seemed surprised to see anyone on such a stormy day, but directed Emma to Dr. Coleman's office on the 3rd floor. Emma's heart pounded as she rode the elevator up, one hand protectively cradling her belly as if to shield her unborn child from whatever revelations awaited. The door to office 312 bore a simple nameplate, Thomas Coleman, MD, PhD, Professor Emeritus. Emma knocked her mouth suddenly dry. "Come in." The man who rose from behind the desk was in his mid-60s, his hair more silver than the dark brown in the old photographs, his face more lined. But the piercing blue eyes were unmistakable, the same eyes that had gazed out from those research lab photos with Rebecca. Those eyes now widened in shock as they took in Emma's pregnant form. For a moment, Thomas Coleman seemed unable to speak, his professional composure shattered by her appearance. "You look exactly like her," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma hadn't expected this visceral reaction. She had prepared for denial, for scientific detachment, for legal threats. Not for this raw, emotional response. "Like Rebecca?" she asked softly. Thomas nodded, gesturing for her to sit in one of the chairs facing his desk. He remained standing as if too agitated to settle. The resemblance is remarkable, especially around the eyes and mouth. Emma placed the manila envelope she'd brought on his desk. I have copies of everything I found. Letters Rebecca wrote during her pregnancy, photos of the two of you, newspaper clippings about your research project. Thomas made no move to touch the envelope. Where did you find these? A storage unit auction. Unit 219 at Blackwell Storage on Elmwood. Victor Blackwell was there, personally unusual according to the other bidders, and his representative, Leo Maxwell, has been very insistent about recovering any personal documents I might have found. Thomas's expression darkened at the mention of Blackwell. He finally sat down, running a hand through his silver hair in a gesture of evident distress. Victor has always been thorough in protecting his interests. What interest would those be, Dr. Coleman, and what did they have to do with my birth mother? The direct question seemed to catch him off guard. You believe Rebecca is your birth mother. The evidence is compelling. The birth date on the redacted certificate matches mine. The hospital is where I was born, and you recognized her in my face the moment I walked in. Thomas sighed heavily, the sound of a man who had carried a burden for too long. Yes, Rebecca Coleman is your birth mother. The simple confirmation sent a wave of emotion through Emma that was surprisingly powerful. Suspecting was one thing, knowing was another entirely. And my father, she asked, though she had already begun to suspect the answer. Thomas met her gaze directly. Biologically speaking, that would be me. The world seemed to tilt beneath Emma despite her being seated. She had prepared herself for this possibility, yet hearing it stated so plainly was overwhelming. You're my grandfather. Your father, Thomas corrected quietly. Rebecca was not my daughter. We were colleagues who became involved, inappropriately given our professional relationship and age difference. Emma struggled to reconcile this information with the photos she'd seen. But in the pictures, you share a last name. I assumed you were married or related. Rebecca took my name briefly, not through marriage, but to facilitate her position on the research team. Nepotism rules were strict, but exceptions could be made for family members. It was unethical, a shortcut I convinced myself was justified by the importance of our work. The self-recrimination in his voice was evident. Just one of many ethical compromises I made during that period. Before Emma could process this information, the office door opened without a knock. A woman in her late 50s entered, impeccably dressed despite the snowy weather. Her expression froze when she saw Emma. Thomas, what is this? Her voice was sharp with suspicion. The secretary said you had a visitor, but you were supposed to be home hours ago. The roads are becoming impassable. Diane, Thomas stood quickly. This is Emma Reynolds. She's here about a university matter. Diane's gaze moved from Thomas to Emma, taking in her pregnant figure and the manila envelope on the desk. Her eyes narrowed with sudden comprehension. This is about Rebecca Coleman, isn't it? After all these years, I thought we were finally past this. It's not what you think, Thomas began, but was interrupted by another arrival. Leo Maxwell appeared in the doorway, snow melting on his expensive overcoat. His expression shifted from professional neutrality to alarm when he saw Emma. Dr. Coleman, Mrs. Coleman, I apologize for the intrusion. Victor sent me to ensure you got home safely in the storm, but I see you have company. The tension in the room was palpable. Emma felt trapped in a web of connections she was only beginning to understand. Diane Coleman clearly knew something about Rebecca. Leo Maxwell was visibly uncomfortable with Emma's presence. Ms. Reynolds and I were just finishing our discussion, Thomas said stiffly. No, Emma stated firmly, one hand protectively over her belly. We've barely started. I have a right to know about my birth parents, especially with Rebecca currently fighting cancer. Did you know she's at Lakeside Medical Center, your medical center, Dr. Coleman? Diane's sharp intake of breath suggested this was news to her. Rebecca is here in Riverside. Thomas's face had gone pale. I was unaware. Bullshit, Emma said, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. Riverside isn't that large, and you're on staff at the hospital affiliated with the cancer center. You expect me to believe you didn't know your former research partner, the mother of your child, was receiving treatment there? Leo stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind him. This conversation needs to end now. Miss Reynolds, Mr. Blackwell was quite clear about recovering any documents from that storage unit. We're prepared to compensate you generously. I'm not interested in compensation. Emma stood facing all three of them. I'm interested in the truth. Why is Victor Blackwell so invested in some 30-year-old letters and photos? What are you all trying to hide? You have no idea what you're getting involved in, Diane said coldly. This isn't some heartwarming reunion story. There are reputations at stake, legal implications. Legal implications, Emma echoed. Like breaking into my apartment, like the research scandal these clippings hint at, or perhaps like abandoning your own child? This last question was directed at Thomas, who flinched as if struck. It wasn't that simple. Then explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you chose your career over acknowledging your own daughter. And now that I'm having a child of my own, I find that particularly hard to understand. A tense silence filled the office. Outside, the snow continued to fall, the world beyond the windows a swirl of white. Inside, decades of secrets hung in the air between them. Thomas finally spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. You deserve answers, but this isn't the place. He glanced at Leo, and certainly not with Victor Blackwell's representative present. Leo's expression hardened. Dr. Coleman, Mr. Blackwell, has been more than patient with this situation, if Mount. Reynolds is making accusations. I'm not making accusations, Emma interrupted. I'm asking questions about my own origins. Questions that apparently make all of you very uncomfortable, which only convinces me further that there's something significant you're hiding. Diane placed a manicured hand on Thomas's arm. Don't say anything more without legal counsel. You remember what happened last time. Emma felt a flare of frustration. She had come so close to answers only to face more stonewalling. I just want to know where I come from, and I wanted to meet Rebecca before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Before she dies, Diane supplied bluntly. And then what sue for inheritance, claim a share of Thomas's patents. We've seen this before, young lady. That's not what this is about. Emma's voice rose with emotion. I'm about to become a mother. I have no family left. My adoptive parents died years ago. My boyfriend abandoned me when I told him I was pregnant. Can you understand why I might want to know my birth mother? Why medical history might be important to me and my child? Something in her impassioned plea seemed to reach Thomas. He straightened his shoulders, a decision visibly forming in his expression. I want a DNA test. He announced, his tone brooking no argument. If Emma is indeed Rebecca's daughter and mine, then she has every right to answers, and to meet Rebecca if that's what they both want. Leo started to object, but Thomas silenced him with a raised hand. This is a family matter, Mr. Maxwell. Please tell Victor I'll speak with him directly tomorrow. The authority in Thomas's voice was unmistakable. For the first time, Emma glimpsed the powerful academic and researcher behind the troubled man, the person who had built a distinguished career atop whatever secrets they were keeping. Leo hesitated, then nodded curtly. I'll convey your message. He glanced at Emma. This isn't over, Ms. Reynolds. After Leo departed, Diane collapsed into a chair, her composure finally cracking. Thomas, you can't be serious. After everything we've been through, everything we've built, you're going to risk it all for this. This stranger who shows up with convenient timing and a sob story. Look at her, Diane, Thomas said quietly. Really look at her. She has Rebecca's eyes. My mother's chin. Can you honestly say you don't see it? Diane's gaze reluctantly shifted to Emma's face, studying her features with new intensity. Something flickered in her expression, recognition, perhaps, or resignation. A DNA test, she finally conceded. But nothing more until we have concrete proof, and our lawyer needs to be involved before any further discussions. Emma nodded, understanding this was as much as she would get today. How soon can we do the test? Thomas checked his watch. The university lab could process it quickly, but given the storm, that will have to wait until tomorrow at earliest. As if on cue, Emma's phone chimed with a text from Mr. Garcia. Roads worsening, coming now. Meet at main entrance. I need to go, Emma said, gathering her things. My ride is here, and the weather is getting worse. Thomas stood hesitating awkwardly before speaking. If when the DNA test confirms what I already know, we'll talk. Properly. About everything. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. After 32 years of wondering about her origins, she was finally on the verge of answers. But as she made her way carefully down the snowy steps toward Mr. Garcia's waiting car, she couldn't shake the feeling that those answers might be more complicated and dangerous than she had ever imagined. The snow intensified overnight, blanketing Riverside in 8 inches of pristine white that glittered under street lamps like fields of diamonds. Emma woke in the Garcia's guest room to the sound of a snowplow rumbling past. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly, feeling the reassuring movement of her daughter. "Good morning, little one," she whispered. "Today we might find some answers about where we come from." Her phone chimed with a text from Thomas. "University lab open. DNA test at 11 a.m. Office number 312. Despite the weather, Thomas's determination to proceed with the test buoyed Emma's spirits. She dressed carefully in her warmest maternity clothes, borrowed Mr. Garcia's snow boots, and accepted his offer of a ride to the university with profound gratitude. "Be careful, sweetheart," Mrs. Garcia fussed, pressing a thermos of homemade chicken soup into Emma's hands. "The Weather Channel says another system is coming in this afternoon. Don't get stranded." The drive to Riverside University took twice as long as normal, the roads still treacherous despite the plow's best efforts. Few people ventured out, giving the campus an abandoned quality that amplified Emma's sense of entering forbidden territory. Thomas met her at the entrance to the medical building, his face grave. "Diane isn't coming," he stated without preamble. "She's processing, and the roads from our neighborhood are still unplowed." Emma nodded, unsure whether to feel relieved or disappointed by Diane's absence. "What about Leo Maxwell or Victor Blackwell?" "I spoke with Victor this morning. He's aware of the situation." Thomas's expression revealed nothing of that conversation's content. "Let's proceed with the test. The lab technician is waiting." The university's genetics laboratory occupied the entire 5th floor of the medical research building. Unlike the warm woods and comfortable furnishings of Thomas's office, the lab was all stainless steel, white surfaces, and the antiseptic smell of scientific precision. A young woman in a lab coat greeted them with professional detachment. "Dr. Coleman, Ms. Reynolds, I understand this is a private paternity test." She handed them each a consent form. Emma glanced at Thomas, who nodded slyly. "Yes," she confirmed, accepting a cotton swab for her cheek cells. The technician worked quickly, labeling their samples and explaining the accelerated processing Thomas had authorized. "We should have preliminary results in about 6 hours. Dr. Coleman has requested our highest priority protocol." After completing the necessary paperwork, they stepped back into the hallway. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until Emma finally spoke. "You said we would talk, properly, about everything." Thomas glanced at his watch. "My office, the cafeteria, won't be open given the weather, but I keep a coffee machine and some provisions for when research keeps me late." His office seemed different in daylight, smaller somehow, the weight of decades of academic achievements evident in the crowded bookshelves and framed certificates. Thomas busied himself with the coffee machine tucked in the corner while Emma settled awkwardly into a visitor's chair. "I suppose," he began, his back still turned as he measured coffee grounds. "You want to know about Rebecca first?" "Yes," Emma didn't bother hiding her eagerness. "Everything." Thomas sighed, the sound of a man preparing to lift a heavy burden. "We met in 1988. Rebecca was in her final year of nursing school doing clinical rotations at Springfield Memorial. I was a research physician leading a promising study on autoimmune disorders. She was brilliant, intuitive about patient care in ways that can't be taught, with a natural talent for research protocols." He placed a mug of coffee in front of Emma, then settled behind his desk with his own. "She joined my research team after graduation. The work was revolutionary. We were developing a treatment protocol that showed remarkable results in preliminary trials. The pharmaceutical companies were circling, including Victor Blackwell's firm." Emma sipped her coffee, giving Thomas space to continue at his own pace. The story he was sharing felt fragile, as if it might shatter if rushed. "Rebecca and I became involved during a research conference in Chicago. Unprofessional, unethical given our positions, but—" Thomas stared into his coffee. "We fell in love, or at least I thought we did. She was 22. I was 42, married with a teenage daughter." "Diane?" Emma asked. "No, my first wife, Catherine. She died in 2001, breast cancer." Thomas's expression clouded with old grief. "Diane came much later. She was my department chair when I moved to Riverside University in 1995. Emma tried to place these relationships in the timeline she was constructing. So when Rebecca became pregnant, it was 1990. Our research was in the critical phase of human trials. Victor Blackwell's company was our primary funder, with millions invested in patents pending. When Rebecca told me about the pregnancy, Thomas's voice faltered. I panicked. Everything I'd worked for was at stake, my reputation, my marriage, the research itself. The admission hung in the air between them, its moral weight palpable. Emma felt a surge of anger on behalf of her birth mother. You abandoned her. Not immediately. Thomas's eyes finally met hers, haunted by decades-old choices. I suggested termination. When she refused, I promised support, but privately. No acknowledgement of paternity, no changes to our professional relationship. I convinced myself it was the only practical solution. Emma's hand moved protectively to her belly, identifying powerfully with Rebecca's position, pregnant, vulnerable, facing impossible choices. What happened? Our research hit complications. Some patients developed unexpected side effects. Rebecca identified the problem first, a contamination in one of the compound batches that altered its behavior. She wanted to halt the trials report, the findings, start over with proper safeguards. Thomas rose abruptly, moving to the window where snow continued to fall in thick, lazy flakes. Victor Blackwell disagreed. The financial implications of a delay were substantial. He suggested alternative explanations for the data, ways to continue without raising regulatory flags. And you went along with it. Emma guessed the pieces of this decades-old scandal beginning to align. God help me, I did. Thomas's shoulders slumped. Rebecca threatened to report the contamination herself. That same week, her pregnancy became impossible to hide. Blackwell connected the dots, saw an opportunity. A cold feeling settled in Emma's stomach that had nothing to do with the weather outside. What did he do? He made Rebecca an offer her silence about the research in exchange for a private settlement that would secure her future and the child's. When she refused, he went to the hospital board with allegations of professional misconduct. Our relationship, her pregnancy. Meanwhile, he arranged for the contaminated samples to disappear, replacing the data with acceptable results. Emma struggled to process the magnitude of what Thomas was describing. He falsified medical research data. That's criminal. Extraordinarily difficult to prove, especially when the original samples vanished and the lead researcher corroborated the revised findings. The self-loathing in Thomas's voice was unmistakable. Rebecca was discredited, her concerns dismissed as the emotional reaction of a woman facing career ruin and an unwanted pregnancy. But that wasn't true, Emma's voice hardened. She wanted me. Those letters make that clear. Thomas nodded, the movement almost imperceptible. Rebecca's parents intervened, old-fashioned people with rigid beliefs about unwed mothers. They arranged a private adoption through their church connections, insisted it was best for everyone. Rebecca was in no position to fight them, jobless, reputation in tatters, abandoned by his voice broke, by the baby's father. The cruelty of it struck Emma like a physical blow. The image of Rebecca writing those heartbroken letters while knowing her child would be taken away, it was almost unbearable. And you, she demanded, what happened to you? I continued the research with Victor's company. The treatment protocol went to market in '93 under a slightly modified formulation. It was successful, phenomenally so. I received academic accolades, financial rewards, patent royalties, everything I had prioritized over basic human decency. The stark admission hung in the air between them. Outside, the snow fell relentlessly, a perfect counterpoint to the cold revelations filling the office. And now Rebecca has cancer. Emma couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. Thomas flinched visibly. Lymphoma, aggressive type. I learned about her diagnosis 6 months ago through a former colleague at Springfield Memorial. She was seeking experimental treatment options. Is it related, Emma pressed, to the contamination she was exposed to? I don't know. It's possible the compound contained elements later linked to increased cancer risks with long-term exposure. But proving causation after 30 years, Thomas shook his head. When I reached out to her, she refused contact. The treatment referral to Lakeside was the only help she would accept from me. The revelation that Thomas had attempted to help Rebecca however inadequately, shifted Emma's understanding slightly. Does she know about me that I'm here? No. Our only communication was through her oncologist, but she never stopped looking for you. That much I do know. A lump formed in Emma's throat. The thought that Rebecca had continued searching, had never forgotten her, struck a deep chord within her. Those storage units, why did Victor Blackwell have them? Why was he at the auction? Thomas returned to his desk, his movements heavy with fatigue. Rebecca's personal effects were placed in storage when she moved for treatment. Blackwell Properties owns the facility. Victor has always been thorough in protecting his interests. When payment lapsed, he would have been notified of the upcoming auction. And he wanted to ensure no one found evidence of what really happened with the research. Emma was putting it together now. My birth certificate, Rebecca's letters, the newspaper clippings, they're all potential evidence of wrongdoing that could still have consequences today. The treatment is still on the market. The patents still generate millions annually. Victor's pharmaceutical company eventually went public, making him a fortune, and my entire career was built on that research. Thomas's clinical detachment crumbled. We buried the truth so deeply we almost believed our own lies, until you walked into my office wearing Rebecca's face. Emma absorbed this feeling, the weight of a scandal that had shaped her entire existence before she was even born. Her birth, her adoption, the separation from her biological parents, all collateral damage in a corporate cover-up. I want to meet her, Emma stated firmly. Today, as soon as the DNA results confirm what we already know. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll make arrangements, but Emma, her condition is advanced. The treatments are brutal. She may not be as you imagine her. I don't care, Emma insisted. I've waited 32 years. I won't wait any longer just because it might be difficult. A sharp knock interrupted their conversation. The lab technician stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, looking vaguely uncomfortable. Dr. Coleman, Ms. Reynolds, I have your preliminary results. The full report will take longer, but the relationship markers are definitive. Emma's heart pounded as the young woman handed the tablet to Thomas. He glanced at the screen, his expression unchanging, though his knuckles whitened against the tablet's edge. 99.9997% probability of paternity, he said quietly, returning the tablet. Thank you, Melissa. After the technician left, silence descended upon the office. The abstract possibility had become scientific fact. Thomas Coleman was her biological father, a man who had chosen career over conscience, ambition over accountability. A man who had allowed his own child to be taken away rather than face professional consequences. Yet as Emma studied his face, the face that had unknowingly contributed to her own features, she saw not just the callous researcher who had abandoned Rebecca, but an old man haunted by the worst decisions of his life. The realization didn't absolve him, but it complicated her anger in ways she hadn't anticipated. I'll call the cancer center, Thomas finally said, reaching for his phone. As he arranged for their visit, Emma moved to the window, watching the snow transform the campus into an unrecognizable landscape of soft curves and buried landmarks. Her own life felt similarly transformed, familiar contours hidden beneath layers of new information, the solid ground of her identity shifting beneath her feet. Thomas ended his call with a heavy sigh. Rebecca's doctor says she's having a good day, relatively speaking. He'll prepare her for visitors, though he cautioned about expectations. Emma turned from the window. What does that mean? The treatments affect cognitive function sometimes. Memory, emotional regulation. And she hasn't been told about you yet. The shock might be significant. Fear fluttered in Emma's chest, but she pushed it down firmly. I understand. When can we go? They're sending a hospital transport vehicle. The regular shuttles aren't running in this weather. While they waited, Emma gathered the courage to ask the question that had been forming since Thomas's revelations. The contamination Rebecca discovered, what exactly was it, and how did it get into the research samples? Thomas's expression darkened. That's the question that could still bring everything crashing down even after all these years. The official story was an accidental cross-contamination in the lab. The reality was cost-cutting on raw materials by Victor's suppliers, substituting a cheaper compound that amplified certain side effects. And Victor knew, he suspected at minimum. When Rebecca identified the problem, his primary concern was limiting liability, not patient safety. Thomas hesitated, then added reluctantly, and I allowed it, because the alternative was admitting we'd expose patients to unnecessary risks, delaying the treatment by years, losing millions in funding. The admission hung in the air between them, its moral weight almost tangible. People could have died, Emma said quietly. People did die. Thomas corrected, his voice barely audible. 3 trial participants developed aggressive lymphomas within 5 years. The statistical analysis dismissed it as coincidence, unrelated to treatment exposure. But Rebecca, he swallowed hard. Rebecca kept files, documented everything. That's what Victor really wants from that storage unit. Evidence that could still support criminal charges even now. Emma's blood ran cold. And Rebecca's cancer, is it the same type? Thomas couldn't meet her eyes. Yes. The simple admission landed like a physical blow. Rebecca hadn't just been professionally ruined and personally devastated, she'd been poisoned by the very research she'd tried to protect from corruption. You let this happen, Emma whispered, the enormity of it almost beyond comprehension. You chose money and prestige over people's lives. Over Rebecca. Over me. Before Thomas could respond, his office phone rang. He answered briefly, then stood. The transport is here. It's time. They rode to Lakeside Medical Center in tense silence, the specialized vehicle navigating the snow-covered streets with cautious precision. Emma stared out the window, her thoughts a turbulent mix of anticipation and apprehension. After 32 years of wondering about her biological mother, she was minutes away from meeting her under circumstances so complicated and tragic they defied simple emotion. Lakeside Medical Center rose like a gleaming fortress against the snowy backdrop, its modern glass and steel construction a testament to cutting-edge medical care. The irony wasn't lost on Emma. Rebecca was being treated in a facility funded in part by the very research that had potentially caused her illness. The oncology floor was eerily quiet, most outpatient appointments canceled due to weather. A nurse met them at the elevator, her expression carefully neutral as she recognized Thomas. Dr. Coleman, we've prepared Ms. Coleman for visitors, though Dr. Patel wants to speak with you first. Emma followed Thomas and the nurse down a corridor of closed doors, each concealing private battles against an implacable enemy. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, feeling her daughter's movements, as if the unborn child sensed the significance of this moment. Dr. Patel met them in a small consultation room, his dark eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Coleman, Ms. Reynolds, before you see Rebecca, I need to set realistic expectations. The latest treatment protocol has been aggressive. She experiences good days and difficult days. Today is better than most, but she tires easily, and her emotional responses can be unpredictable. Does she know why we're here? Thomas asked. I explained that Dr. Coleman was visiting with someone who believes they may be related to her. I did not specify the nature of that relationship. Dr. Patel's gaze shifted to Emma. Given her condition, significant emotional shocks could be detrimental. I suggest a measured approach. Emma nodded, though inwardly she questioned whether any approach could soften the reality of their meeting. I understand. I'll follow her lead. Very well. Dr. Patel stood. She's in room 512. I'll accompany you. Room 512 was at the end of the corridor, a corner room with windows on 2 sides that in better weather would have offered a view of the hospital gardens. Today they showed only swirling snow against a steel-gray sky, creating a cocoon-like atmosphere within. Rebecca Coleman sat propped against pillows, a colorful scarf wrapped around her head, where treatment had claimed her hair. She was thin too, her once youthful features now sharp angles beneath pale skin. Yet the eyes that turned toward them as they entered were startlingly familiar to Emma. They were her own eyes with the same intense blue that stared back at her from every mirror. Recognition flickered in those eyes as they landed on Thomas, followed by a complex emotion Emma couldn't name. Thomas. What an unexpected surprise after all these years of studied avoidance. Her voice was raspier than Emma had imagined, but the dry wit caught her off guard. This was not a fragile invalid, but a woman whose spirit remained undiminished by illness. Rebecca, Thomas's voice caught slightly. You're looking well. A ghost of a smile touched Rebecca's lips. Liar. But your bedside manner was always atrocious. Her gaze shifted to Emma, sharpening with interest. And who have you brought with you? Another researcher interested in the miraculous Coleman treatment protocol. The subtle emphasis on miraculous conveyed volumes about her true opinion of Thomas's work. Emma stepped forward, suddenly unsure how to begin this impossible conversation. My name is Emma Reynolds, she said simply. I was born on September 30th, 1990 at Springfield Memorial Hospital. Rebecca's expression froze the color draining from her already pale face. Her eyes darted between Emma and Thomas, making connections with the rapid precision of a scientific mind. That's not possible, she whispered. My baby was a closed adoption. Sealed records. Emma moved closer to the bed, allowing Rebecca to see her features more clearly. I found your letters in a storage unit auction. Unit 219 at Blackwell Storage. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, trembling visibly. My things. I couldn't keep up the payments when the treatment started. Her gaze fixed on Emma's face with desperate intensity, searching for confirmation of what seemed impossible. You have my eyes, she breathed. My mother's chin. The DNA test confirmed it this morning, Thomas said quietly from behind them. 99.997% probability. Emma is our daughter. Our daughter. The simple phrase landed with seismic impact in the quiet room. Rebecca's composure cracked, tears spilling down her hollow cheeks. I searched for you, she told Emma, her voice breaking. For years, the adoption agency wouldn't release information. Your adoptive parents left no forwarding contact. I hired investigators, but the trail was cold. Emma moved to the bedside chair, unable to stay distant from this woman who had carried her, loved her, and lost her. I never knew. My parents told me my birth mother wanted no contact, that it was a closed adoption by mutual agreement. Never. Rebecca's denial was fierce despite her weakness. Never by my agreement. They told me it was best for you that a scandal-tainted single mother couldn't provide the life you deserved. I was alone, discredited, fighting an industry that had closed ranks against me. But I never wanted to give you up. The raw emotion in Rebecca's voice pierced Emma's heart. She reached for her birth mother's hand, finding it fragile but warm within her own. I found you now, she said simply. That's what matters. Rebecca squeezed her hand with surprising strength, then her gaze dropped to Emma's swollen belly. You're having a girl, she stated with certainty. Emma blinked in surprise. How did you know? A faint smile touched Rebecca's lips. You carry exactly as I did with you. All in front, high and tight. Her expression sobered. Is the father involved? No, he wasn't ready for fatherhood. Emma tried to keep the bitterness from her voice. History repeating itself, Thomas murmured from where he stood by the window. Rebecca's gaze hardened as it shifted to him. Not quite, Thomas. Emma's situation lacks the element of deliberate career advancement through ethical violations and abandoned responsibilities. The clinical precision of her accusation cut through the room's emotional atmosphere. Thomas flinched visibly but didn't defend himself. You're right, of course, as you were right about the contamination. About everything. A validation 30 years too late. Rebecca turned back to Emma, her expression softening. But enough about ancient history. Tell me about you, Emma Reynolds. Tell me everything I've missed. For the next hour, Emma shared her life story with the mother she'd never known. Her childhood in a loving adoptive home, cut short by her parents' deaths in a car accident when she was 19. Her accounting career, her relationship with Jason and its painful end, her current precarious circumstances. Rebecca listened with fierce attention, as if trying to absorb 3 decades of her daughter's life in a single conversation. Occasionally, she asked penetrating questions that revealed her sharp intelligence despite her illness. Throughout, Thomas remained by the window, a silent witness to the reunion he had prevented 30 years earlier. As their conversation reached the present circumstances, Emma finally addressed the elephant in the room. The storage unit contained more than just personal letters. There were research notes, documentation about the contamination you discovered. Rebecca's expression grew guarded. Victor Blackwell would be very interested in those materials. He is. His representative, Leo Maxwell, has been quite insistent about recovering them. There was even a break-in at my apartment. Alarm flashed across Rebecca's features. Emma, those documents are dangerous to Victor, to Thomas, to the pharmaceutical empire built on that research. If evidence of deliberate falsification emerged now, the legal and financial consequences would be astronomical. They're evidence of what happened to you, Emma countered, of what might have caused your cancer. Don't you want justice? A complex emotion crossed Rebecca's tired face, part resignation, part determination. Justice is a luxury for those with time, Emma. My oncologist gives me months, not years. What matters to me now is knowing my daughter and ensuring her future and my granddaughter's is secure. The starkness of Rebecca's prognosis struck Emma like a physical blow. She had found her birth mother only to face losing her again. There may be another way, Thomas said, suddenly breaking his long silence. All eyes turned to him as he continued. Rebecca's documentation combined with my testimony could form the basis of a confidential settlement. Not justice in the public sense, but financial security for you and your child, Emma, and recognition of the truth at least among those responsible. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. You would testify against Victor, against your own research. It's time, Thomas said simply. Past time. The moment was interrupted by a light knock as Dr. Patel returned. I'm sorry, but Ms. Coleman needs to rest now. Her afternoon treatment is scheduled in 30 minutes. Rebecca squeezed Emma's hand. Come back tomorrow. Bring the documents. We'll discuss Thomas's interesting proposition. Emma nodded, reluctant to leave now that she'd finally found her birth mother. I'll be here, I promise. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca called out to Thomas. I kept it, you know, all these years. He turned puzzled. Kept what? The original research, the untampered samples, the controlled data proving what really happened. Rebecca's smile held a shadow of her younger self's determination. I may have been discredited, but I was never careless. It's all in the blueprint tube, the one in the storage unit with my architectural drawings. Thomas stared at her in stunned silence as the implications settled. Evidence that could still stand up to scientific scrutiny even after 30 years. Evidence that could bring down careers, companies, reputations. Evidence that had been sitting in a dusty storage unit until Emma's impulsive bid gave it a second chance at discovery. Victor suspects, Rebecca continued. He doesn't know for certain, but he suspects. That's why he's so desperate to recover my things before anyone examines them closely. Emma thought of the long cardboard tube she'd noted during her inventory of the storage unit, but hadn't yet opened. It's still there in the unit. I didn't bring it with the personal items. Then we need to retrieve it immediately, Thomas said with sudden urgency, before Victor realizes its significance. As they left Rebecca's room, Emma felt the baby shift restlessly within her. The simple reunion she had imagined had transformed into something far more complex, a potential legal battle involving powerful interests, decades-old crimes, and evidence that could change lives, including her own and her daughter's. The hospital transport driver waited patiently to return them to the university. Weather's getting worse, he informed them as they climbed in. They're closing the roads in another hour. Interstate's already shut down. Through the vehicle's windows, Emma could see the intensifying storm had transformed from gentle snowfall to driving sheets of white. The peaceful winter wonderland of morning had become a hostile landscape of blinding snow and treacherous ice. We need to get to the storage facility, Thomas told the driver. It's urgent. Sorry, sir. Hospital vehicles are restricted to patient transport between affiliated locations only. Insurance regulations. I can take you back to the university or to approved residences, but that's it. Thomas looked ready to argue, but Emma placed a restraining hand on his arm. The university first, she decided. We can figure out our next steps from there. As they drove through the worsening conditions, Emma's phone chimed with a text from Mr. Garcia. Are you safe? Roads dangerous. Stay where you are until storm passes. She quickly responded, assuring him she was currently in safe transport and would remain at the university if necessary. The Garcias' concern touched her deeply, their kindness a stark contrast to the moral compromises and betrayals she'd discovered in her biological father's past. I still have my rental card at the university, Thomas said as they crawled through the snow-clogged streets. 4-wheel drive. We could make it to the storage facility before they close for the storm. Emma weighed their options, acutely aware of her responsibility, not just to herself, but to her unborn child. Is it worth the risk? The documents have been there for years already. Victor knows you've connected with me now. He'll assume you know about the research materials. This storm gives him perfect cover for removing evidence, fewer witnesses, emergency personnel occupied elsewhere. The urgency in Thomas's voice convinced Emma he was right. Victor Blackwell had already demonstrated his willingness to break into her apartment. With the stakes now fully apparent, his desperation would only increase. All right, she agreed, but at the first sign of truly dangerous conditions, we turned back. By the time they reached the university parking lot, another 2 inches of snow had accumulated. Thomas's SUV was nearly buried, requiring precious minutes to clear before they could depart. The campus was eerily deserted, the storm having driven even the most dedicated researchers and administrators home. As Thomas maneuvered the vehicle out of the parking lot, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Mr. Reynolds." Leo Maxwell's voice was tense, the professional polish replaced by urgent demand. "Where are the research materials from Unit 219? Emma's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play games. Rebecca Coleman's research notes, lab samples, the blueprint tube. Where are they? How did you get this number?" Emma deflected, buying time to think. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that those materials are valuable property belonging to parties I represent. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for their return, enough to secure your future and your child's." Thomas glanced at Emma questioningly. She put the phone on speaker so he could hear. "Those materials document criminal negligence and fraud," she replied, emboldened by what she now knew. "They're evidence, not property for sale." Leo's voice hardened. "You're making a serious mistake, Ms. Reynolds. Those materials have no evidentiary value after 30 years. The statutes of limitations have expired on any alleged violations. All you're doing is creating unnecessary trouble for people who could either help you significantly or make your life extremely difficult." "Is that a threat?" Emma demanded. "It's reality. Mr. Blackwell is at the storage facility now, prepared to make this offer in person. I suggest you meet him there before this storm makes travel impossible, and before you make decisions you'll regret." The call ended abruptly, leaving Emma and Thomas in stunned silence as the SUV crawled along the snow-covered street. "He's bluffing about the statute of limitations," Thomas finally said. "For fraud of this magnitude with ongoing profits from a tainted product, the clock starts when the deception is discovered, not when it was committed." Emma processed this information, understanding now why Victor was so desperate. So the evidence in that storage unit could still send people to prison, could still trigger billions in damages, product recalls, class action suits. Thomas gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Could still destroy everything Victor has built. Everything I've built." Emma studied his profile, noting the grim determination that had replaced his earlier hesitance. "Yet you're helping me recover it." "Why?" Thomas was silent for so long, and Emma thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow with decades of regret. "Because I've lived with this lie for 30 years. Watched it poison everything it touched. My marriage to Catherine. My relationship with my daughter from that marriage. My conscience. Rebecca's life and career. Your entire existence shaped by decisions made to protect that lie." He navigated carefully around an abandoned car, the SUV's tires struggling for purchase on the ice beneath the fresh snow. "The truth doesn't care about our convenience, Emma. It waits patiently to be acknowledged, growing more destructive the longer we deny it." The simple wisdom of his statement resonated with Emma, who had spent her adult life searching for truths about her origins without fully understanding what those revelations might cost. As they approached the storage facility, visibility deteriorated further. The wind had picked up, driving snow horizontally across the road in blinding sheets. Few other vehicles braved these conditions, giving the world an apocalyptic emptiness that amplified Emma's sense of isolated vulnerability. Blackwell Storage loomed ahead, its rows of units barely visible through the swirling white. A single black luxury SUV was parked near the office, confirming Leo's claim about Victor's presence. Thomas pulled alongside it, killing the engine. "Let me do the talking initially," he suggested. "Victor and I have history. He'll be more contained with me than with you." Emma nodded, though concern fluttered in her chest. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her mother's apprehension. "I just want the blueprint tube. Nothing else matters." "The evidence matters," Thomas corrected quietly. "The truth matters. Stay behind me, and whatever happens, remember that." Together, they pushed through the driving snow to the office door, where a sign announced, "Closed due to weather emergency." Through the glass, Emma could see Victor Blackwell seated at the manager's desk, Leo Maxwell standing beside him. Both men looked up sharply as Thomas knocked. Leo moved to unlock the door. his expression shifting from surprise to calculated neutrality. Dr. Coleman, Ms. Reynolds, you've chosen a dangerous day for storage retrieval. We need to talk, Victor, Thomas stated without preamble as they entered the overheated office, about Rebecca Coleman's research materials. Victor Blackwell rose from behind the desk, his expensive wool coat incongruous against the shabby office furniture. At 58, he remained imposingly fit, his silver hair and confident bearing projecting the authority of a man accustomed to obedience. Thomas, I was hoping we could resolve this situation privately between old friends. Were we ever friends, Victor, or just convenient accomplices? The bitterness in Thomas's voice surprised Emma, revealing depths of resentment she hadn't anticipated. Victor's smile never reached his eyes. Semantics. We built something important together, a treatment that has helped millions. Are you really prepared to jeopardize that legacy over ancient history? That legacy is built on fraud and Rebecca Coleman's ruined life. Emma interjected, unable to remain silent in the face of such callous revisionism. On my lost childhood with my biological parents. On research participants who died from contaminated treatments. Victor's gaze shifted to her, coldly assessing. Mrs. Reynolds, your unexpected appearance has certainly complicated matters. But perhaps we can find a solution beneficial to everyone. I understand your financial situation is precarious, particularly with a child on the way. The practiced sympathy in his tone made Emma's skin crawl. I'm not interested in being bought off. Everyone has a price, Victor countered smoothly. It's simply a matter of finding the correct figure. $500,000 perhaps, for materials that are legally speaking abandoned property in a defaulted storage unit. Emma felt Thomas stiffen beside her. That's your offer for evidence of criminal negligence and fraud that has likely caused Rebecca's cancer. That cost me 30 years with my biological parents. $1 million then, Victor amended, as if they were haggling over a used car, rather than decades of deception. A clean break, new start for you and your child. No messy legal battles that would drag on for years with uncertain outcomes. Before Emma could respond, Thomas stepped forward. She's not interested, Victor, and neither am I. It's time for the truth. Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. After 30 years of benefiting from our arrangement, you've suddenly found your conscience. How convenient, Thomas, and how disappointing. Not suddenly, Thomas corrected. It's been a slow, corrosive process. Watching Rebecca's career destroyed, learning about her cancer, meeting the daughter I abandoned before she was even born. He glanced at Emma, regret etched in the lines of his face. Some debts can't be paid with money, Victor. Some require full accounting. Victor's urbane mask slipped, revealing a harder, more calculating expression. This isn't a negotiation I expected to have during a blizzard, but since we're all here, let me be absolutely clear. If those research materials become public, I will ensure everyone involved suffers the consequences. Not just me, not just my company, everyone. His gaze fixed on Thomas. Your prestigious career, your patents, your current research funding. Gone. Your marriage to Diane when she learns you've deliberately destroyed everything you built together, also gone. He turned to Emma. And you, Ms. Reynolds, a single mother with no job, no home, no resources, dragged through years of expensive litigation while raising a child alone. Is that the future you want for your daughter? The naked threat hung in the air, its ugliness filling the small office. Outside, the storm raged unabated, mirroring the turbulence within. Where is the blueprint tube? Leo demanded, breaking the tense silence. We know it contains the original research samples and documentation. Emma thought of the long cardboard tube still sitting in the half-cleared storage unit. She had assumed it contained nothing more valuable than architectural drawings. Now it represented both danger and salvation evidence of crimes, long buried proof of Rebecca's professional integrity, leveraged for her own future security. It's safe, she answered, refusing to reveal its location. And it stays that way until we reach an agreement that acknowledges the truth and provides proper compensation, not just to me, but to Rebecca and every patient affected by the contaminated treatment. Victor's laugh held no humor. You're in no position to dictate terms, Ms. Reynolds. This facility is closed due to weather. No witnesses, no surveillance functional in these conditions. He nodded to Leo, who moved toward the door, effectively blocking their exit. I suggest we resolve this matter definitively right now. The storm outside howled with newfound intensity, rattling the flimsy office windows, as if nature itself were responding to the escalating tension within. Emma's hand moved protectively to her belly, feeling her daughter kick vigorously in response to the adrenaline flooding her system. Victor's threat hung in the air between them, its implications unmistakable. Thomas moved slightly, positioning himself between Emma and Leo. "You've miscalculated, Victor. Whatever happens here today, the evidence doesn't disappear. Rebecca has copies, insurance policies, she called them." The flicker of uncertainty in Victor's eyes suggested Thomas had struck a nerve. "You're bluffing. Rebecca lost everything when she was discredited. No lab would accept materials from her. Rebecca may have lost her professional standing, but not her intelligence or foresight." Thomas's voice carried quiet conviction. "Did you really think she'd leave herself completely vulnerable to what we did to her?" Emma watched this exchange with growing understanding. Thomas was buying time, creating doubt. Whether Rebecca actually had backup evidence was less important than making Victor believe she might. "Even if such insurance policies existed," Leo interjected smoothly, "they'd be degraded beyond scientific validity after 30 years of improper storage." "Perhaps," Thomas acknowledged. "But coupled with my testimony as the lead researcher, with the original research notebooks documenting the contamination discovery, the evidence would certainly warrant investigation, even if conclusive proof proved elusive." Victor's urbane mask slipped, further revealing the calculating businessman beneath. "Your testimony, after 30 years of signing annual recertifications for the treatment protocol, after collecting millions in patent royalties, your credibility wouldn't survive the first deposition." "Which is why this isn't about court battles," Emma interjected, finding her voice. "It's about negotiation. Fair compensation for harm done, recognition of Rebecca's contribution, financial security for those affected." She held Victor's gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated despite the precariousness of their situation. "The storm is only getting worse. Soon the roads will be completely impassable. The three of us could be stuck here for hours, possibly overnight. Is that really how you want to spend your blizzard? Making threats you can't legally enforce while the evidence remains hidden." Victor studied her with newfound calculation, perhaps recognizing in Emma the same stubborn resilience that had made Rebecca so formidable an opponent decades ago. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A private settlement. Generous compensation to Rebecca for her stolen research and resulting illness. A trust for my daughter. Public acknowledgement of Rebecca's original findings in any future research publications." Emma kept her voice level, as if discussing an ordinary business transaction rather than the resolution of 30 years of deception. In exchange, the original samples and notebooks remained private. Leo shook his head skeptically. "Mr. Blackwell doesn't respond to extortion." "It's not extortion," Thomas countered. "It's accountability, limited private accountability, which is far less than what the situation warrants." He turned to Victor, his expression hardening. "Consider it a bargain, actually. The cost of a few million in settlements versus billions in legal damages, criminal penalties, and destroyed reputations." Victor moved to the window, watching the snow obliterate the world outside. The silence stretched, broken only by the howling wind and creaking of the building's framework against the storm's assault. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its threatening edge. $3 million. Total package, $1 million to Rebecca, $2 million in trust for the child. Standard non-disclosure agreements. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. He turned back to face them. "Final offer." Emma opened her mouth to respond, but Thomas spoke first. $10 million. 5 for Rebecca's stolen research and resulting health issues. 5 for Emma and her daughter, plus revision of all research publications to credit Rebecca's original work. Victor's laugh held no humor. "Absurd. 5 million total. No publication revisions. The professional implications would raise too many questions." 8 million, Emma countered. "And Rebecca's name goes on the research. She earned that recognition. Without it, there's no deal." The negotiations continued for another tense 20 minutes, the storm's intensity matching the atmosphere within the small office. Finally, Victor conceded the key points: $7 million in total compensation, with Rebecca's name to be added to future publications through a carefully worded historical recognition of contributions that wouldn't trigger scrutiny of the original research. "I'll have legal draw up the paperwork," Leo stated, already typing on his phone. "We can digital signature today, but we'll need the physical evidence turned over as part of execution." Emma shook her head firmly. The evidence remains secure until the funds are transferred and the publication credits confirmed. Call it our insurance policy. Victor's expression darkened momentarily, but he controlled it quickly. Very well. Where is this evidence currently? Safe, Emma repeated, refusing to be more specific. When your legal team delivers the settlement documents and confirms the transfers, you'll receive the location. The office phone rang, startling them all. Leo answered, listening briefly before covering the receiver. It's the district manager. Roads are officially closed county-wide. Emergency vehicles only until further notice. Victor checked his watch with evident frustration. Perfect. Stranded in a storage facility during negotiations for a multi-million-dollar settlement. The manager's apartment is on site, Leo added after a brief exchange with the caller. He's offering limited accommodations given the emergency conditions. Power is still stable due to the backup generators. The prospect of being confined with Victor and Leo in close quarters for the duration of the storm sent a chill through Emma that had nothing to do with the weather. She caught Thomas's eye, silently communicating her discomfort. We accept, Thomas decided, understanding the limited options. But I suggest we use this time to finalize the settlement details rather than delay further. The manager's apartment above the storage office was Spartan, but warm, with a small kitchenette living area and 2 bedrooms. He had evacuated to his sister's home before the worst of the storm hit, leaving the space available for stranded visitors. Leo immediately claimed the dining table for his laptop, connecting to the facility's backup internet to communicate with Victor's legal team. The storm had created surreal circumstances. Corporate lawyers in comfortable offices drafting multi-million-dollar settlements, while their clients were weatherbound in a storage facility manager's apartment. Emma settled awkwardly on the worn sofa, her back aching from both pregnancy and tension. Thomas brought her a cup of tea from the kitchenette, the small gesture of care incongruous against their extraordinary circumstances. I've texted the Garcias, she told him quietly. Let them know I'm safe but stranded by the storm. They were worried. Thomas nodded, his expression thoughtful. They seem like good people. The best. They've helped me more in the past week than... She trailed off, not wanting to finish the comparison that had sprung to mind. Than your biological father did in 32 years. Thomas completed the thought, his voice tinged with self-recrimination. You don't need to spare my feelings, Emma. I've had decades to become accustomed to the consequences of my choices. Across the room, Victor ended a phone call and approached them, his expression unreadable. Legal says 2 hours minimum for the preliminary documentation. The storm is complicating communications. Then we wait, Thomas replied simply. The forced proximity created a strange atmosphere as the afternoon stretched on. These 4 people, bound together by decades-old secrets, present-day threats, and now a literal storm, found themselves in a bizarre domestic tableau. Leo worked diligently at his computer. Victor alternated between tense phone calls and staring out at the blinding whiteness beyond the windows. Thomas retreated into contemplative silence. Emma's phone chimed with a text from Mr. Garcia. Checking on you, power outages in neighborhood. We're fine. Where are you sheltering? She hesitated, weighing how much to reveal, then replied simply, safe at storage facility with others. Manager's apartment has generator. Will update when I can. A sudden sharp pain gripped Emma's lower back, causing her to inhale sharply. It was different from the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd experienced before, more intense, more purposeful. She glanced at her watch, making a mental note of the time, trying not to betray her concern. Thomas noticed her discomfort. Are you all right? Just uncomfortable, she murmured, not wanting to draw Victor's attention. The baby's been active today. Thomas's medical training made him observant. His eyes narrowed slightly as he studied her posture, but he didn't press the issue publicly. Instead, he moved to the kitchenette under the pretense of making more tea, gesturing subtly for Emma to join him. How long have you been having contractions? He asked quietly once they were out of earshot. That was the first real one, Emma admitted. But I've been feeling odd all day. It's too early, Thomas. 3 weeks early. 3 weeks is considered late preterm. Most babies do fine, he reassured her, though concern creased his brow. Let's time them if they continue. It could be false labor triggered by stress. Emma nodded, grateful for his calm medical perspective. She returned to the sofa, trying to appear relaxed while internally monitoring every sensation. 20 minutes later, another contraction arrived, stronger than the first. She breathed through it carefully, using techniques from her birthing class while keeping her expression neutral. Leo's phone rang, breaking the tense silence. He answered, his professional demeanor slipping as he listened to the caller. I understand, he said finally before ending the call and turning to Victor with evident discomfort. Sir, there's a situation at the Springfield office. The internal audit has discovered discrepancies in the research documentation archives. Victor's expression hardened. What kind of discrepancies? Missing files, specifically backup data from the 1990 trials. Leo's gaze flickered briefly to Emma. The timing is concerning. Understanding dawned on Emma. Rebecca's insurance policy wasn't just a bluff. She had somehow accessed and removed incriminating evidence even after being forced out of the research program. The realization that her birth mother had been playing a longer game than anyone suspected filled Emma with renewed admiration. Victor's phone rang next. His side of the conversation consisted mostly of terse, single-word responses, his expression darkening with each passing second. When he ended the call, the mask of urbane control had completely vanished. It seems, he said, voice dangerously quiet, that Rebecca Coleman accessed the safe deposit box at Springfield First National Bank yesterday through a recently added cosigner. His gaze fixed on Emma. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Emma's genuine surprise couldn't be faked. I have no idea what you're talking about. Convenient timing, Victor snarled. Very well. The settlement offer is rescinded. When this storm clears, you can expect the full weight of my legal team to descend upon you, Thomas, and whatever remains of Rebecca. Another contraction seized Emma stronger than the previous ones, making it impossible to hide her physical reaction. She curled forward slightly, breathing deliberately through the pain. Thomas immediately moved to her side, medical instincts overriding all other concerns. How far apart? He asked, abandoning any pretense. About 15 minutes, Emma managed as the contraction eased, but getting stronger. Leo watched this exchange with growing alarm, some long-dormant human decency seemingly reawakening. She needs medical attention. We need to call for help. In this storm, impossible, Victor dismissed, and hardly my concern. Our business here is concluded. Leo looked between his employer and the pregnant woman with open conflict in his expression. Something shifted in his demeanor, a moral line crossed perhaps, or a personal threshold reached. Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, we cannot simply ignore a woman in labor during a blizzard. We're not ignoring anything, Victor replied coldly. We're prioritizing. Ms. Reynolds made her choice to engage in these negotiations, despite her condition. Actions have consequences. The callous statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Leo stared at his employer with new eyes, as if truly seeing the man for the first time. My sister died in childbirth, he said quietly. Preventable complications. I will not stand by and watch history repeat itself. He moved decisively to the phone, dialing emergency services despite Victor's glare. We have a woman in premature labor at Blackwell's storage on Elmwood Avenue. Unit manager's apartment. Yes, we understand the storm conditions. This is an emergency medical situation involving a high-risk pregnancy. Thomas had moved into full physician mode, helping Emma into a more comfortable position while checking her pulse. The contractions are still far enough apart that we have some time, he assured her. First labors typically progress slowly. Typically, Emma echoed, wryly grimacing as another contraction began building. Nothing about this situation has been typical. Leo ended his call with a grim satisfaction. They have a specialized emergency vehicle with snow capabilities. ETA 45 minutes to an hour, depending on conditions. Thank you, Emma said simply. Victor's phone rang again. He answered, moving to the far corner of the room for privacy, but fragments of his conversation carried clearly. Containment priority. Secure all archives immediately. Terminate Coleman's physician privileges. Legal standing by. Thomas's face hardened as he overheard these snippets. He's scorching the earth, he murmured to Emma. Destroying evidence, cutting off Rebecca's treatment options. Can he do that? Emma asked, alarmed, despite her physical discomfort. Unfortunately, yes. His influence at Riverside is substantial. Donations, board positions. Thomas trailed off, his expression troubled. But Rebecca's attending physician, Dr. Patel, is a person of integrity. He won't abandon a patient regardless of administrative pressure. Victor ended his call, his expression closed and calculating. Mr. Maxwell, we're leaving. The district manager has a snowmobile in the maintenance shed. It can get us to the main road where my driver can meet us. Leo stared at his employer in disbelief. Sir, I just called emergency services. They're dispatching specialized equipment for Ms. Reynolds. And they'll find her with Dr. Coleman when they arrive, Victor replied dismissively. Our presence is no longer required or beneficial. A strange expression crossed Leo's face, the look of a man who had reached a breaking point after years of moral compromise. I'm staying, he stated simply. Someone needs to guide the emergency responders when they arrive. Victor's surprise quickly transformed to cold anger. That would be unwise, Mr. Maxwell, given your employment contract and non-disclosure agreements. Some things matter more than legal documents, sir. Leo's voice was quiet but firm. My resignation will be on your desk when the road's clear. The confrontation was interrupted by Emma's sharp gasp as another contraction seized her, more powerful than the previous ones. Thomas checked his watch with growing concern. They're accelerating, 12 minutes apart now. He turned to Leo. Call emergency services back. Tell them the labor is progressing faster than expected. Leo nodded, moving quickly to the phone. Victor watched this desertion with cold fury before donning his coat. You've made your choice, Maxwell. Expect consequences. With that parting threat, he swept from the apartment into the howling storm. Thomas barely registered Victor's departure, focused entirely on Emma's condition. I need to examine you, determine how far along you are. Emma nodded through gritted teeth as the contraction peaked. After a brief examination, Thomas's expression grew more serious. 4 centimeters dilated already. This is moving faster than typical for a first birth. Is that bad? Emma asked, fear edging into her voice. Not necessarily, Thomas reassured her. Just unexpected. The baby's in proper position, which is good news. Leo returned from his call, his professional demeanor replaced by genuine concern. They're sending their most advanced vehicle, but the storm has worsened. Estimated arrival now 60-90 minutes. That might not be soon enough, Thomas replied quietly. We need to prepare for the possibility of delivering here. Leo paled visibly but nodded with determination. What do you need? Clean towels, sheets, hot water, first aid kit if available. Thomas's voice shifted to the authoritative tone of a physician taking command in an emergency. And we need to keep her warm and as comfortable as possible. While Leo gathered supplies, Thomas sat beside Emma, his expression softening from medical authority to something more personal. I'm sorry, he said simply. Emma looked at him questioningly through the haze of discomfort. For what? For everything. For not being there when you were born. For the choices I made that put Rebecca in an impossible position. For the fact that your daughter might be born in a storage facility manager's apartment during a blizzard instead of a proper hospital. The raw honesty in his voice reached something in Emma that polished apologies could not have touched. We don't choose the circumstances of our beginnings, she replied, surprising herself with the grace she could summon despite her physical distress. We only choose what we do with the time we're given. Thomas's phone rang unexpectedly. He answered, surprise registering on his face. Diane. Emma could hear the tinny sound of an agitated female voice through the speaker, though not the specific words. Thomas listened for several moments before responding. Yes, we're safe. Emma's in labor. Emergency services are attempting to reach us. I understand your concern, but... He paused, listening intently, his expression shifting to one of surprise. You did what? When? I see. When he ended the call, he stared at his phone as if it might explain the conversation. Diane accessed the hospital records, he said slowly. She's been researching Rebecca's case since our meeting yesterday. She found the connection between Rebecca's cancer and the contaminated compound from our research. Why would she do that? Emma asked between carefully measured breaths. She said... Thomas seemed to be processing the information himself. She said she needed to know if I was being manipulated or if there was truth to your claims. She's a researcher herself, methodical, evidence-driven. And she found evidence, Emma concluded. Yes, more than I realized existed. Apparently, Rebecca's oncologist documented everything, creating a clear timeline linking her exposure to her current illness. Thomas ran a hand through his silver hair. Diane said she's contacting the hospital administration to ensure Rebecca's treatment continues regardless of Victor's interference. This unexpected alliance from the woman who had so recently viewed Emma as a threat was difficult to process, particularly through the increasing waves of labor pain. Before Emma could respond, another contraction seized her, more powerful than any before. 6 minutes apart now, Thomas noted with concern, and increasing in intensity. Leo returned with an armload of supplies, looking surprisingly competent despite his evident nervousness. I found everything except proper medical equipment. The manager apparently keeps a well-stocked emergency kit for winter storms. It will have to do, Thomas decided, organizing the supplies with practiced efficiency. If emergency services don't arrive in time, We'll manage with what we have. Emma's phone rang the hospital again. Thomas answered for her while she breathed through another contraction. Dr. Coleman speaking. Yes, she's with me. Labor progressing rapidly. Approximately 6 minutes apart. His expression changed suddenly. She's what? I understand. Yes, if we can reach you safely, that would be. Thank you. He ended the call turning to Emma with an expression of wonder and concern. That was Dr. Patel. Rebecca has taken a turn. She's asking for you specifically. His voice softened. She knows you're in labor. Somehow she knows. And she's fighting to hold on until you can reach her. Emma felt tears spring into her eyes, the emotional impact temporarily overwhelming even the physical demands of labor. We have to get there, she whispered, somehow. As if in answer to her determination, headlights suddenly cut through the snow-blanketed darkness outside, accompanied by the low rumble of a specialized engine. Leo rushed to the window, confirmation brightening his expression. They're here. Emergency transport. The emergency medical technicians who entered the apartment were clearly experienced professionals. A middle-aged woman with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had seen everything, and a younger man carrying an equipment designed for field deliveries. They quickly assessed Emma's condition, conferring quietly with Thomas. 5 minutes apart, increasing intensity water hasn't broken yet, the female technician summarized. First pregnancy, approximately 37 weeks gestation. She turned to Emma. We have a specialized transport vehicle outside that can get us to Lakeside Medical Center. The ride won't be comfortable, but it's equipped for emergency delivery if necessary. There's more, Thomas added. Her birth mother is at Lakeside in critical condition terminal cancer. Time-sensitive family situation. Understanding dawned in the technician's eyes. We'll do our best to get you there in time for both priorities, she promised Emma. Let's move before the next contraction hits. The journey to Lakeside Medical Center through the blizzard's fury was surreal. A slow-motion adventure through a white wilderness that had swallowed the familiar landscape of Riverside. The specialized vehicle, with its tank-like tracks instead of wheels, moved with surprising stability through snowdrifts that would have immobilized ordinary vehicles. Emma focused on her breathing techniques as contractions continued to intensify and close the gap between them. The female technician Sandra, she'd introduced herself, monitored Emma's vitals continuously while providing calm reassurance. You're doing wonderfully, she encouraged. First babies usually take their time, even when labor progresses quickly at the start. Nothing about this baby has been typical, Emma replied through gritted teeth as another contraction peaked. Thomas sat opposite them, his expression alternating between professional concern and deeper emotional turmoil. Leo had remained behind at the storage facility, promising to secure the remaining items from Emma's unit and meet them at the hospital when roads reopened. As they neared the hospital, Emma's contractions accelerated dramatically, now barely 3 minutes apart, and powerful enough to make conversation impossible. The technicians exchanged knowing glances. Change of plans, Sandra announced. We're going directly to labor and delivery. Family reunions will have to wait until we've stabilized your condition. No, Emma managed between contractions. Please, Rebecca might not have much time. I need to see her first. Sandra hesitated, checking Emma's vital signs again before conferring with her partner and Thomas. 5 minutes, she finally conceded. If your water hasn't broken by then, we proceed to L&D immediately. Lakeside Medical Center rose like a gleaming fortress against the snowy backdrop, its emergency entrance blazing with lights designed to guide vehicles through the worst conditions. The specialized transport pulled directly up to the doors where a medical team waited with a wheelchair. Dr. Coleman called ahead, a nurse explained as they helped Emma from the vehicle. We have a dual contingency plan in place. The dual nature of that contingency became clear as they wheeled Emma through the hospital corridors. Instead of turning toward the labor and delivery wing, they headed for the oncology floor, where Dr. Patel waited outside Rebecca's room. Ms. Reynolds, he greeted Emma, his expression both compassionate and concerned. Rebecca has been asking for you. She's conscious but weak. The medications we're using to maintain her vital functions may not keep her stable much longer. He glanced at the medical team accompanying Emma. What's her status? Contractions 3 minutes apart, increasing intensity, Sandra reported. No membrane rupture yet, but progressing rapidly for a first labor. Dr. Patel nodded. 5 minutes maximum, then she goes to labor and delivery, regardless of emotional circumstances. I've arranged for an OB to meet you there. He stepped aside, allowing the team to wheel Emma into Rebecca's room. The sight that greeted Emma was both more peaceful and more devastating than she had imagined. Rebecca lay still, her breathing assisted by machines, yet her eyes were open and alert, watching the door with desperate intensity. When Emma entered, those blue eyes, so like her own, filled with tears of recognition. "Emma," Rebecca whispered, her voice barely audible above the machinery. "You came." "Of course I came," Emma managed, fighting through a building contraction to reach Rebecca's bedside. The medical team positioned her wheelchair close enough to take Rebecca's fragile hand in hers. "My granddaughter. She's coming." Rebecca's gaze moved to Emma's belly with knowing recognition. "Yes," Emma confirmed. "Very soon, it seems. She's impatient to meet you." A ghost of a smile touched Rebecca's pale lips. Like her grandmother. She squeezed Emma's hand with surprising strength. Victor took the evidence. Emma nodded, grimacing as another contraction built. "The blueprint tube. But Thomas thinks you have other copies." The smile strengthened slightly. "Safe deposit box. Springfield First National. Transferred to your name last week." Each word seemed to cost tremendous effort, yet Rebecca persisted with characteristic determination. "Everything there. Original samples, documentation, my journal, with all dates and names." She paused, gathering strength. "Enough to prove everything. Code and Research Journal, page 97. Thomas had entered behind Emma, hanging back respectfully, but within Rebecca's line of sight. She beckoned him closer with a slight movement of her free hand. "Thomas, you're here." "I'm here," he confirmed, moving to the opposite side of the bed and taking her other hand. "I should have been here 32 years ago." "You're here now," Rebecca whispered. "With her. With them both." Her gaze moved between Thomas and Emma with a complex emotion that transcended their complicated history, something like forgiveness, though harder earned and more valuable for its difficulty. Emma gasped as a particularly powerful contraction seized her, impossible to disguise. Rebecca's expression shifted to concern. "You need to go. The baby—" "Not yet," Emma insisted once she could speak again. "I needed you to know we have a settlement with Victor. $7 million. Your name will be recognized in all future research publications. Your contribution acknowledged." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. "Victor agreed to this." "Before he discovered your backup evidence, yes," Thomas confirmed. "He may try to renege now, but with the additional documentation you secured, his position is untenable." A satisfied expression crossed Rebecca's face. "Good. Use the money well, Emma. For yourself, for your daughter." "I will," Emma promised, then gasped as another contraction hit stronger than any before. This time, the distinctive sensation of her water breaking accompanied it. The wheelchair cushions suddenly soaked. The medical team sprang into action immediately. "We need to move to L&D now," Sandra insisted, already positioning Emma's wheelchair for rapid transport. "Wait," Rebecca called, her voice suddenly stronger, fueled by desperate urgency. "Her name. Have you decided?" Emma nodded through the receding contraction. "Lily Rebecca Reynolds. After you." Emotion overwhelmed Rebecca's features, a lifetime of longing and loss somehow validated in that simple act of recognition. "Perfect," she whispered. "Beautiful girl." As the medical team prepared to rush Emma to the delivery room, Rebecca made one final request. "Let me see her. When she comes. Please." "We'll do everything possible," Dr. Patel promised, though his expression suggested such arrangements would be medically challenging given Rebecca's condition. The journey to labor and delivery passed in a blur of accelerating contractions and medical preparations. Emma was transferred to a delivery bed, examined by the waiting obstetrician, and pronounced already at 7 centimeters dilation. "This is moving exceptionally quickly for a first birth," the doctor observed. "The baby is eager to make her entrance." Thomas remained at Emma's side, simultaneously serving as medical consultant and family support. A nurse approached with admission paperwork, pausing awkwardly at the name of the father. Emma hesitated momentarily before answering, "Unknown." The technical truth of that statement hung between her and Thomas, a reminder of how recently they had discovered their biological connection and how complex their relationship remained. Yet his presence during this most vulnerable moment represented a tentative bridge across 32 years of absence. "I called Diane again," Thomas told Emma between contractions. "She's fighting the administrative barriers Victor put in place, using her department chair authority to ensure Rebecca's care continues uninterrupted." "Why?" Emma managed. "Why would she help us after everything?" Thomas's expression reflected his own wonderment at this development. She said that some principles transcend personal feelings. that the truth matters more than comfortable lies. He paused, watching monitors tracking both Emma's and the baby's vital signs. She's coming to the hospital as soon as the emergency vehicles can reach her. Another contraction seized Emma, more powerful than any before, accompanied by an overwhelming urge to push. The attending medical team responded immediately to her physical cues, the obstetrician confirming she had reached full dilation with remarkable speed. "It's time to push with the next contraction," the doctor instructed, positioning the delivery team. Thomas moved to Emma's side, offering his hand for support. "I wasn't there when you came into this world," he said quietly. "I'm grateful to be here for your daughter's arrival." Emma gripped his hand with surprising strength as the next contraction built. The pain transcended anything she had imagined, yet brought with it a primal focus that narrowed the universe to this single essential task. She pushed with all her strength, guided by instinct more than instruction. "I can see the head," the doctor announced. "Dark hair just like her mother and grandmother." The personal observation, so different from clinical medical commentary, created a sudden connection across the delivery room team, a recognition that this birth represented not just a medical event, but the continuation of a family line nearly severed by decades of secrets. "Next contraction, push steadily," the doctor directed. Emma complied, channeling all her remaining energy into the effort. The pain crested in a burning sensation of impossible intensity, then suddenly released, the baby's head emerged fully. "One more push for the shoulders," the doctor encouraged. The final push came with the next contraction, her body working with unstoppable determination. A slippery sensation, another release of pressure, and then the miraculous sound of a newborn's indignant cry filled the delivery room. "She's here," the doctor announced, gently placing the squirming, vernix-covered infant on Emma's chest. "Your daughter is here and she's perfect." Time seemed to suspend as Emma gazed at Lily for the first time, tiny features scrunched in protest at her abrupt entry into the world, little fists waving with surprising strength. Despite the slightly premature birth, she appeared perfectly formed, her lungs clearly functional, based on the robust quality of her cries. "Hello, Lily Rebecca." Emma whispered the name, carrying the weight of generations, honoring the grandmother who had searched for decades, the connection nearly lost but now miraculously restored. Thomas watched them with an expression of wonder and regret so intermingled it was impossible to distinguish where one ended and the other began. "She's beautiful," he said simply. "Absolutely perfect." A nurse approached urgently. "Dr. Patel called from oncology. Rebecca's condition is deteriorating rapidly. If you want her to meet the baby." Understanding the urgency, the medical team moved with exceptional efficiency. After ensuring both mother and baby were stable, they arranged for a portable bassinet and wheelchair transport. Within 15 minutes of birth, a timeline that bent numerous hospital protocols through sheer medical authority and compassion, Emma found herself being wheeled back to oncology with Lily securely swaddled in her arms. They arrived to find Rebecca's room transformed. Dr. Patel had ordered her bed adjusted to a more upright position, oxygen as support increased, and monitors temporarily silenced to create a more peaceful environment. Despite these efforts, the decline in Rebecca's condition was visibly apparent. Her breathing more labored, her color diminished, her energy clearly fading. Yet when Emma entered with Lily, Rebecca's eyes opened with startling clarity, as if she had been waiting through sheer force of will for this moment. "You brought her," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Of course," Emma replied, moving closer to the bed. "She couldn't wait to meet you." With infinite care, Emma adjusted the blankets to reveal Lily's face. The baby had settled after her initial protest, now regarding the world with unfocused newborn eyes that nevertheless seemed to fix momentarily on Rebecca's face. "May I?" Rebecca raised her hand slightly, the request clear in the gesture. Emma nodded carefully, positioning Lily so that Rebecca could touch her cheek. The contact between the woman beginning her life's journey and the one nearing its end created a moment of transcendent connection that silenced everyone in the room. "Our family circle," Rebecca murmured, her fingers gentle against Lily's delicate skin. "Complete at last." The door opened quietly as Diane Coleman entered, her usual composed authority softened by the scene before her. She paused, hesitating to intrude on this deeply personal moment, but Thomas beckoned her forward with a slight gesture. "Rebecca," he said gently, "this is Diane, my wife." Rebecca's gaze shifted to the newcomer, assessing her with surprising lucidity. "You fought for my treatment to continue." Diane nodded, moving closer with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "The truth matters," she said simply, "even when it's uncomfortable, perhaps especially then." Something passed between the two women, an understanding that transcended words, a recognition of shared values despite their complicated connection through Thomas. Rebecca nodded slightly acceptance in the gesture. Take care of them, she told Diane, the directive gentle but unmistakable. All 3 generations. I will, Diane promised, her tone suggesting this was no mere politeness but a genuine commitment. Rebecca's gaze returned to Lily, drinking in every detail of her granddaughter's features. She has the Coleman eyes, she observed with a hint of her former scientific precision. And your determination, Emma, I can see it already. And your resilience, Emma added softly. Your intelligence, your courage. Rebecca smiled faintly at this, then her expression grew more serious. The evidence in the safe deposit box, she said, her voice growing fainter. Use it wisely, not for vengeance, for justice. She paused, gathering strength for what was clearly becoming an enormous effort to speak, and to protect others from similar harm. I understand, Emma assured her, recognizing this as both practical instruction and deeper legacy, the passing of a torch from one generation to the next. The moment was interrupted by the soft sound of a camera shutter. A nurse had quietly captured the 4-generation tableau. Rebecca in her hospital bed, Emma beside her, with newborn Lily Thomas and Diane completing the circle. The image would later become a cherished possession, displayed prominently in Emma's home and office. Rebecca's strength was visibly fading, her eyelids growing heavy despite her evident desire to remain present. I'm tired now, she whispered, but at peace. I've found you. Both of you. Her gaze moved from Emma to Lily, then to Thomas. Remember me truthfully, the good and the difficult. We will, Thomas promised, his voice thick with emotion. Your name and contribution will be acknowledged properly, your courage recognized. Rebecca nodded, slightly satisfaction in her expression as her eyes drifted closed. The monitors continued their quiet tracking of vital signs, showing her heartbeat still present, still fighting but gradually slowing. Dr. Patel motioned gently that they should let her rest. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca spoke once more, her voice barely audible, yet carrying the weight of decades of longing finally fulfilled. My girls, she whispered, my beautiful girls. So, 2 years later, Emma stood before a modest brick building in downtown Riverside, watching as the sign maker finished installing the polished bronze plaque beside the entrance, the Rebecca Coleman Center for Family Reunification. Lily, now a lively toddler with her grandmother's eyes and determined expression, squirmed in Thomas's arms beside her. Down, Grandpa, down, she insisted, eager to explore the newly renovated space. Not yet, little tornado. Thomas laughed, the joy in his expression, a stark contrast to the haunted man Emma had first encountered in his university office. Let's wait for Grandma Diane to arrive with the flowers. The past 2 years had transformed them all. Rebecca had survived another 3 months after Lily's birth, long enough to see the settlement finalized, her research properly credited, and Victor Blackwell's pharmaceutical empire begin its long public unraveling under regulatory scrutiny. She had died peacefully with Emma, Lily Thomas, and Diane at her bedside, the family circle she had fought so long to complete. The evidence from the safe deposit box had proven even more comprehensive than anyone anticipated. Rebecca had methodically documented everything from the original contamination discovery to Victor's subsequent cover-up, including dates, names, and even recorded conversations. The material had been enough to trigger investigations by both the FDA and SEC, resulting in massive fines for Blackwell Pharmaceuticals and the recall of several medications. Victor himself had avoided criminal prosecution through expensive legal maneuvering, but his reputation and fortune were irrevocably diminished. The settlement funds he had reluctantly paid to Emma and Rebecca's estate now formed the foundation of this center, a facility dedicated to helping separated families reconnect with special focus on adoption reunifications. There's Diane, Emma pointed, watching her stepmother-in-law navigate the sidewalk with a large floral arrangement for the grand opening. The relationship between them had evolved from initial suspicion to genuine respect and eventually a warm familial bond that surprised them both. Diane had proven unexpectedly supportive after Rebecca's death, helping Emma navigate both new motherhood and her grief while managing the complex legal aftermath of the Blackwell settlement. When Thomas proposed converting their guest cottage into a home for Emma and Lily, it had been Diane who insisted they properly renovate the space for long-term comfort. Everything ready inside? Diane asked as she joined them, balancing the flowers while leaning in to kiss Lily's cheek. As ready as we'll ever be, Emma confirmed. First official case tomorrow morning, a woman searching for her birth father after finding letters in her late mother's attic. The symmetry wasn't lost on any of them. Emma had transformed her accounting background into a specialized skill set for this work, following paper trails, organizing searches, navigating bureaucracy, and ultimately helping reunite families separated by circumstance, choice, or deception. Rebecca would be proud, Thomas said quietly, adjusting Lily's small cardigan against the autumn breeze. Not just of the center, but of you, the way you've turned a painful past into purpose. Emma nodded, watching a young couple approach the center's entrance, hesitantly, clearly gathering courage to come inside. Their expressions, a mixture of hope and fear, determination and vulnerability, were now familiar to her. They were the faces of people standing at the threshold of discovering their origins, their connections, their truth. That's what Rebecca taught me, Emma replied, moving toward the entrance to welcome the visitors. That even buried truths find their way to the surface eventually. Our job is simply to help them emerge with compassion rather than chaos. As she opened the door to greet the young couple, Emma caught sight of her reflection in the glass alongside the mirrored images of Thomas, Diane, and Lily waiting supportively behind her. Four lives connected by chance, choice, and the contents of a forgotten storage unit that had yielded treasures far more valuable than furniture or antiques, the evidence of truths that survive even the most determined efforts to conceal them. Welcome to the Rebecca Coleman Center, Emma greeted the visitors warmly. How can we help you discover your story?